Hi everyone, welcome back to the Forsaken Joe channel. Buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you is something I still can't fully wrap my head around. It all started in the most humiliating moment of my life, standing in front of a room full of guests at the registry office, sweating under my suit, when the bride simply never walked in. Yeah, you heard that right. I was left standing there like a complete fool, and I could feel every whisper, every glance from the crowd slicing through me like a knife. The music had already played. The officiant was waiting. People were holding their phones, ready to take pictures of the happy couple. And I just stood there, waiting for Nora, who apparently decided that breaking me in private wasn't cruel enough. She left me hanging in front of everyone I knew. I wish I could tell you that I took it like a man, but I didn't. My legs were shaking, my stomach twisted, and I could barely breathe. I wanted to run, hide, vanish. Anything but stand there while my family, her family, and all our friends stared at me like I was some tragic circus act. Then, out of nowhere, I heard her sister Lydia's voice behind me. Calm. Almost too calm. "She's not coming," Lydia said, as if that explained everything. "She's gone. She left you a note." A note. Not even a phone call, not a face-to-face explanation. Just a pathetic piece of paper that I didn't even have the heart to read right then. The whispers turned into murmurs, the kind of noise that feels like it's crawling into your skull. I wanted to scream at everyone to just leave me alone, but I didn't have the strength. And that's when Lydia did something that shocked every single person in the room. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you want, I'll stand with you, right now. Let's not give them the satisfaction of seeing you broken." The room went dead silent. I think I actually laughed, a bitter, broken laugh that sounded more like a sob. "Are you crazy?" I muttered. "You can't just stand in for her. That's insane." But Lydia didn't flinch. "Insane? Maybe. But are you really going to let her destroy you like this?" I looked around at all those faces, half of them looking at me with pity, half of them probably recording on their phones, ready to post my humiliation online. And something in me snapped. It wasn't courage. It wasn't love. It was just raw, messy anger. I took Lydia's hand. "Fine, let's do something they'll never forget." The next few minutes were a blur. I don't know if it was the humiliation, the disbelief, or just pure adrenaline. But when Lydia took my hand, the entire room gasped. I could see my mother's mouth drop open, Oliver shaking his head as if I'd just lost my mind. Maybe I had. But at that moment, standing there abandoned, I felt like I had nothing left to lose. If I walked out of that room alone, I'd be the guy who got left at the altar. The pathetic story people would laugh about behind my back for years. But if I went through with something completely unthinkable, at least I'd own the chaos instead of letting it consume me. "Are you sure about this?" I whispered to Lydia as we faced the officiant. She squeezed my hand, her eyes locked on mine with an expression I couldn't quite read, part defiance, part mischief. "She humiliated you in front of everyone. Let's give them something to talk about. Trust me." The officiant was stunned, but didn't say a word. He glanced between us, then cleared his throat and asked, "Are you both ready to proceed?" The room was dead silent. I swear I could hear the sound of people recording this insanity on their phones. My heart pounded in my ears as I nodded. Lydia smiled, a calm, fearless smile that made my stomach twist in a way I hadn't felt in years. The ceremony was quick, mechanical even, but it felt surreal. I kept expecting someone to stand up and shout, "You can't do this!" or for Nora to come storming back in with some ridiculous excuse, but she didn't. By the time the officiant pronounced us married, the room was a mix of stunned silence and awkward applause. I stood there with Lydia's hand in mine, feeling like I'd just jumped off a cliff without looking down. The aftershock hit me as soon as we stepped outside. I turned to Lydia and said, "What the hell just happened? Why would you do this?" She shrugged, her face strangely calm. "Because you deserve better than to be left standing there like a fool. And maybe I don't want to see you waste another second on someone who never really loved you." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I realized I barely knew Lydia. She'd always been this quiet presence at family dinners, the one who smiled politely, but never said much. But in that moment, she seemed like the only person who truly saw me. I didn't know if I was supposed to feel grateful, horrified, or completely unhinged. Maybe all three. By the time we got back to the reception hall, the atmosphere was electric. People didn't know what to say. My parents were furious. Oliver was speechless. and Nora's family was split between shock and outrage. Henry stormed up to me, grabbing my arm. "Are you out of your mind, Graham? Do you have any idea what you've just done?" I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Yeah, I just married someone who actually showed up." Lydia stood there, silent but unflinching, as the room buzzed with whispers. I had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, I felt something unexpected, a mix of chaos and freedom. Like, maybe this insane decision was the only thing that could wake me up from the sleepwalking life I'd been living. If I thought the shock in that registry office was bad, it was nothing compared to the chaos that followed. The second we left the building, the whispers exploded into full-blown conversations. My phone was buzzing nonstop with texts from friends who weren't even at the wedding, but had already heard about the guy who married his fiance's sister. By the time we reached the reception hall, the air was so tense you could slice it with a knife. Everyone was looking at us like we were two lunatics who had just hijacked a train. My mom was the first to break the silence. She stormed up to me, her voice trembling with rage. "Graham, what on earth have you done? This is madness. You don't even know what you're doing." I opened my mouth to answer, but Lydia cut in, calm as ever. What he did was take back his dignity. Nora humiliated him, and I wasn't about to let that stand. The look on my mom's face was pure shock. She didn't know what to say to that. Nobody did. Meanwhile, Nora's family was a storm of emotions. Her father refused to even look at me, muttering something about disgrace, while her mother seemed more worried about how this would look to their friends than about her daughter's betrayal. Henry, Nora's brother, was seething. "You can't just marry my other sister like she's a backup plan," he hissed at me. I snapped, "Backup plan?" "She's the only one who had the guts to stand by me today." My voice was louder than I meant it to be, and the entire room froze, watching us like it was some live drama show. The reception didn't exactly go as planned. Most people didn't even know if they should stay or leave, and those who stayed were just there for the spectacle. I tried to eat, but the food tasted like dust in my mouth. Lydia, on the other hand, was as composed as if this was all part of some plan she'd had for years. She leaned over to me at one point and whispered, "You don't need to thank me. Just don't regret this. Not yet." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't sure if I should feel grateful or terrified by her calmness. When the night ended, Lydia and I left together, not because we were suddenly in love or anything, but because everyone expected us to. We got into the car, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You're probably thinking I'm crazy, right?" I let out a laugh that sounded more like a choke. "We both are, but I think I'd rather be crazy with you than spend one more day waiting for Nora to decide if I'm good enough." That car ride home felt like the start of something I couldn't name. Something reckless, dangerous, but undeniably real. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe the annulment papers, maybe a war with Nora's entire family, maybe even regret so deep I'd drown in it. But as I glanced at Lydia, I saw a spark in her eyes, like she was ready for whatever storm was coming. And maybe, just maybe, I was too. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was overwhelmed with love for Lydia, or because I was too giddy about being married. No, it was the complete opposite. I lay awake on the couch in my tiny apartment, my head pounding with a mix of anger, disbelief, and a creeping sense of fear. What had I just done? I wasn't drunk. I wasn't being forced. This was my own reckless decision, and it felt like a grenade had just gone off in the middle of both families. Lydia slept in my bedroom, not because we were suddenly husband and wife in the romantic sense, but because it was the only place she could get some peace from all the calls and messages blowing up her phone. By morning, we both knew that the entire city probably knew our names, thanks to the videos people posted online. It was mid-afternoon when my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I don't know why I answered it. I wish I hadn't. It was Nora. Her voice was shaky, almost too calm, like someone who knew they had already burned every bridge behind them. "Graham," she started, and I almost hung up right then, but I didn't. I just sat there, gripping the phone like it was the last lifeline I had. "I made a mistake," she said. "I wasn't ready. I panicked. But I want to talk. I want to explain." "Explain?" I laughed bitterly, the kind of laugh that tastes like iron. "Explain what? That you left me humiliated in front of 100 people? That you walked out like I meant nothing to you?" She stayed quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I came back. I'm outside your apartment. Please just open the door." For a second, I couldn't even move. My stomach dropped, and I felt this sick twist of emotions: rage, curiosity, maybe even a trace of the love I used to feel for her. Lydia walked out of my bedroom right at that moment, still in one of my oversized t-shirts, her hair messy from sleep. She saw the look on my face and froze. "Who is it?" she asked, and when I didn't answer, she already knew. Opening that door was like inviting a storm into my living room. Nora stood there, looking like she'd been through hell, mascara smudged, eyes red. But I didn't see guilt in her face. I saw anger that I had moved on in the one way she never expected. She glanced at Lydia, and for a split second, I swear the world stopped spinning. "Are you serious?" she spat. "You married her? My sister? Is this some kind of sick revenge?" I wanted to scream, to tell her that she didn't get to ask me questions, not after what she did. But before I could even speak, Lydia stepped forward. She didn't shout, she didn't flinch. "He doesn't need revenge to show you who you really are, Nora. You did this to yourself." What happened next was like watching two tornadoes collide. Nora lunged at Lydia, not physically, but with words sharper than knives. Accusations, old grudges, secrets I didn't even know existed came spilling out. Lydia, however, didn't back down. She stood there like a wall of fire, her voice low and steady, throwing every truth back in Nora's face. And me? I just stood there, a pathetic, useless mess of a man, realizing that my life had spiraled out of control in less than 24 hours. By the time Nora stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the walls, I could barely breathe. Lydia looked at me with this unreadable expression and said, "This isn't over. She's not done with you. Or me." I don't know what scared me more, that Lydia was right, or that some dark part of me didn't want Nora to be done with me. The next few days felt like living inside a pressure cooker. Every time I looked at my phone, there was a new text, a new call, or some ridiculous notification about the wedding disaster video that had started spreading online. Apparently, someone at the registry office had recorded the exact moment I grabbed Lydia's hand and agreed to marry her. And now I was the internet's newest sensation, a pathetic man who got left at the altar and married his bride's sister in the same breath. I couldn't even step outside without imagining people pointing at me, whispering, or worse, recognizing me from the video. It felt like my entire life had been shoved under a microscope, and I hated every second of it. Lydia was handling it better than me, which only made me feel weaker. She seemed calm, almost detached, as though none of this chaos touched her the way it did me. She would make coffee in the mornings, scroll through her phone, and tell me which family members had decided to cut us off that day. "Your cousin posted something nasty about you on Facebook," she mentioned one morning, sipping her coffee as though she were commenting on the weather. "And my mom isn't speaking to me. But hey, at least my grandmother sent me a text saying she thinks I made the right choice." So that's something. I stared at her like she was insane. How could she be so steady while I was falling apart? The real nightmare, though, was Nora. She didn't just walk away after that screaming match in my apartment. No, she started playing this twisted game, calling at odd hours, sending messages that range from apologies to threats to what I can only describe as emotional manipulation. One message said, "You'll regret this, Graham. She's not who you think she is." Another one, just hours later, said, "I miss you. I made a mistake. Let me fix this." I didn't know which version of her to believe, the angry one, the desperate one, or the one who seemed to be laughing at me from the shadows. Lydia saw the messages and just shook her head. "She's trying to break you down," she said, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "Don't let her win." I wanted to believe her, but the truth was, part of me still couldn't shake the history I had with Nora. We'd built a life together, or at least I thought we had. And now, here I was married to her sister, a woman who had been almost a stranger to me until the most chaotic day of my life. One evening, when the tension was eating me alive, I asked Lydia the question I'd been avoiding since the wedding. "Why did you do it? Why me?" She didn't answer right away. She looked at me for a long time, her expression unreadable, and finally said, "Because I've watched you break your back for someone who never cared enough to show up. Because I couldn't watch you crumble while she ran away. And maybe," she hesitated, biting her lip, "maybe I've always seen something in you that she never did." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't know what to say. I felt guilty, confused, and, if I'm being brutally honest, strangely drawn to her. She was so different from Nora, yet there was something in the way she looked at me, like I was more than just a man who had been left behind. But any fragile sense of calm we were starting to build shattered 2 nights later when I came home to find the door to my apartment slightly open. My stomach dropped. I stepped inside, my heart pounding, and there she was, Nora, sitting on the couch like she owned the place. "You didn't think I was just going to let this go, did you?" she said, her voice low and sharp. Lydia appeared from the kitchen, and the look on her face was pure fire. I knew then that whatever was about to happen would tear every last shred of peace apart. When I saw Nora sitting on my couch like nothing had happened, I froze. There was a part of me that wanted to scream at her to get out, to finally take her chaos and leave me in peace. But another part of me, this pathetic, confused part, just stood there, unable to process how she could still look so composed after detonating my life. Lydia was the first to speak. "You have no right to be here," she said, her tone sharp and unflinching. I could feel the tension crackling in the room like electricity. Nora looked at her sister with this cruel smirk. "Oh, so now you're the wife? Is that what we're calling this? You think you can just swoop in and take what's mine because I walked away for a minute?" Her words made my stomach twist. "What's yours?" I snapped, my voice louder than I expected. "You walked out on me, Nora. You left me standing there like a fool in front of everyone. Do you have any idea what that felt like?" She looked at me, her face softening for a moment. "I panicked, Graham. I was scared. But I didn't stop loving you. I couldn't breathe that day." And there it was, the tiny sliver of the old Nora, the woman I'd loved, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with. I hated that a part of me still wanted to believe her. But then Lydia stepped closer, her voice cutting through the fog in my head. "Don't you dare," she said, her eyes locked on Nora's. "Don't you come here and try to play the victim after what you did. You didn't just hurt him. You destroyed everything. And now you want to twist it so he feels guilty for moving on?" Nora's face turned cold. "Moving on?" she laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call this circus act? You really think marrying my sister the same day I left makes this real? He doesn't love you, Lydia. You're just convenient." Lydia's face went pale, but she didn't back down. I could see the fire in her eyes, and something in me snapped. "Enough!" I shouted. "You don't get to come in here and tear her down just because you're angry with yourself. You left me, Nora. Whatever we had, you threw it away. I can't fix that for you, and I won't let you drag me back into your mess." For a second, I thought she was going to hit me. The look in her eyes was pure rage, but underneath it, there was something else, fear. She grabbed her bag, her voice shaking as she hissed, "You'll regret this, Graham. You think she's better than me? You don't know the half of what she's hiding." When the door slammed behind her, I collapsed onto the couch like all the strength had been drained from me. Lydia sat down next to me, but she didn't say anything. I could feel her hand trembling slightly as it rested on mine. I wanted to ask her what Nora meant, but I didn't. Not yet. I was too scared to know. That night, as we sat in silence, I kept replaying everything in my head. Nora's words, her warnings, the venom in her tone. And even though I hated her for what she'd done, part of me couldn't shake the feeling that she was planning something I wasn't ready for. I didn't know it then, but the storm that was coming would make everything up to that point look like child's play. Nora wasn't done, not by a long shot. And the next move she made would change everything. The days after Nora's stormy visit felt like walking through a minefield. Every time I thought things might finally calm down, something new would explode. The first blow came when I woke up to a flood of messages from friends and coworkers, screenshots of a long, venomous post Nora had written on social media. She didn't hold back. She called me a coward, a traitor, a man with no spine, who had ruined her life by marrying her sister as some twisted form of revenge. But what made it worse was the subtle way she painted herself as the victim, claiming she had been emotionally abused by me, that I had pressured her into a life she didn't want. None of it was true, but the damage was done. People who didn't know the real story were already choosing sides, and it wasn't mine. Lydia saw the post before I did. When I stumbled out of bed that morning, she was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone with this quiet fury burning in her eyes. "She's trying to destroy you," she said flatly, shoving the phone across the table. I skimmed the post, my stomach turning with every lie, every twisting of the truth. "Why is she doing this?" I asked, my voice cracking. Lydia leaned back, her gaze sharp. Because she doesn't care if she burns you down, as long as she stays the center of attention. This isn't about love. It's about control. She hates that you're not crawling back to her. I wanted to believe Lydia was right. But deep down, there was still this pathetic, nagging part of me that kept asking, what if Nora was right about me? What if I was just some desperate man who couldn't stand being left? So I grabbed the closest lifeline. I didn't say that out loud, of course. I just nodded, trying to convince myself that I hadn't completely lost my mind. The real turning point came 2 nights later when I got home from a late-night drive. I had been trying to clear my head, to find a way to stop feeling like the whole world was staring at me. But when I walked into the apartment, the front door was slightly ajar. My heart started pounding instantly. I stepped inside, calling Lydia's name, but there was no answer. Then I saw it, on the living room floor, scattered like the aftermath of a hurricane. Photos. Dozens of them. Photos of me and Nora. Photos I hadn't seen in years, pulled from albums I thought we'd thrown away. They were slashed, torn, some of them marked with red ink like something out of a bad horror movie. Lydia came out of the bathroom a few seconds later, her face pale. "Graham, she was here," she said, holding up a crumpled envelope. Inside was a single note in Nora's handwriting. "You don't get to erase me. I'll always be here." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. This was turning into something dark, something dangerous. That night, Lydia and I didn't sleep. We sat on the couch with the lights on, both of us silent, our thoughts tangled in fear and anger. I kept asking myself, over and over, how I had let my life get to this point. How had I gone from being an ordinary guy planning a wedding to being stuck in this nightmare triangle of love, hate, and obsession? Lydia finally broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's not going to stop, Graham. You know that, right? She's going to keep coming until she ruins you. Or us." The weight of her words pressed down on me like a ton of bricks. For the first time, I started to wonder if I was even capable of handling this. Nora knew me better than anyone. She knew how to break me, how to twist every weakness until I crumbled. And the worst part? A part of me still cared. As the sun started to rise, I looked at Lydia and said, "If we're going to survive this, we have to figure out what she's planning next. I don't trust her. I don't even trust myself around her." Lydia nodded, but there was something in her eyes that unsettled me, something I couldn't name. And that was the moment I realized, maybe it wasn't just Nora I should be worried about. The breaking point came a week later, and I think it's the moment that finally changed everything for the better. Nora had gone quiet for a few days, which terrified me more than her constant texts. Silence from her never meant peace. It meant she was planning something. Lydia and I were barely talking at this point, both of us tense and exhausted from the constant drama. Then one evening, just as I was about to lose it completely, Nora showed up at my door for what would be the last time. She didn't look like the fiery, vindictive version of herself I'd seen recently. She looked tired, broken even. Her voice wasn't sharp anymore. It was soft, almost pleading. "Graham, I need to talk to you. Just hear me out." I hesitated, but Lydia was standing right behind me and said, "Let her speak. Let's get this over with." We sat down, the three of us in this heavy, suffocating silence, and Nora finally admitted the truth. She hadn't left me because of me, or because she didn't love me. She left because she was terrified of the commitment, of the future, of failing at marriage the way her parents had. She said seeing Lydia step in that day hit her harder than anything, because it wasn't just about jealousy. It was about realizing someone else had the courage she didn't. I looked at Lydia, expecting her to gloat, but she didn't. Instead, she surprised me by saying, "Nora, you need to stop blaming everyone else for your fear. You left Graham. That's on you. But this isn't a game anymore. We're all hurting, and it has to end." For the first time, Nora didn't fight back. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. And in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. The anger, the bitterness, it started to fade. I realized I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want closure from Nora anymore. I just wanted to move forward, to finally stop living in this toxic mess. Lydia and I didn't rush into anything after that day. We talked, really talked, for the first time since the wedding. We admitted that what happened wasn't planned, and maybe it wasn't normal, but it was real. Over time, that chaotic bond turned into something softer, something steady. I can't explain it, but Lydia saw me in a way no one else ever had. and I think I started to see myself differently too. It's been months now, and life is finally calm. Nora moved out of the city, started therapy, and we've had a few civil conversations since. Lydia and I are still figuring things out. But for the first time in years, I feel like I'm not just surviving. I'm living. And weirdly enough, I owe that to the disaster that started it all. So, what do you guys think? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done at that registry office? Would you have taken Lydia's hand or walked away and started over alone? Let me know in the comments. Your take on this story is something I'd love to hear. And don't forget, this was Forsaken Joe. If you enjoyed this wild ride, subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Who knows, maybe the next confession will be even crazier than this one.